I'm
as the
marketing
brand
to a
of
scene that
Biscuit.
already knows who I am anyway. My brand is
right.
larger than a lot of these tournaments. You know, it's not bigger than DreamHack. DreamHack is big, but a lot of this other stuff, my brand is bigger than their brand. It's beneficial to them to have me there rather than the other way around, right? And that's how it works.
So John, I'd like to get your thoughts on just your tweet today, then, about maybe it's time to switch. Let me see. Let me bring up the exact quote where you were talking about just there's going to be less casting jobs, and then you just in general in SC2. So maybe it's time to switch. Why tweet that?
I say it because at the end of the day, if I don't have passion for the scene, I'm not going to continue to invest time and money into it. If there isn't a crowd to go and cast for, then I don't see the point in casting at all. If I was to cast anything, I'd try and cast something that I enjoy doing. I wouldn't just do it for the paycheck. And right now I play a decent amount of Dota 2, and I watch TI3, and I'm like, yeah, this is actually really fun to watch. And I can see the passion there, and maybe I would cast it because it would be fun to do it. And really, that's kind of the only reason. There's been plenty of opportunities for me to cast other games for large paychecks that I've turned down. And frankly, I think it's going to continue to be that way.
But it just so happens that the one game you enjoy right now is going to be the big kid on the block, like moving into 2014.
That's my perception. Don't know if that's anyone else's. A lot of people disagree with me on that one. They think that LoL will continue to dominate.
I don't know. I mean, look, I think in terms of viewing numbers, it's got a way to go, but certainly in terms of getting exposure and sort of profile and stuff. Look, I mean, we've seen this before, and you know this as well as I do, and it's something that no one really talks about in esports, and I've always called people out on it. That, for example, when StarCraft 2 was announced, all of a sudden all these big esports personalities were talking about, oh, I love Brood War, love me a bit of Brood War, followed it for years, and they all jumped onto the StarCraft 2 bandwagon. And people
exactly. Other than Wheat. I mean,
now you're trying to get me to name names, which would probably be career suicide. I don't have as big.
Get Wheat.
I don't have as big a Twitter following as you, John. Do I? So you know what I mean. So I can't come out and name names. But look, people know who they are. The community chewed them up about it at the time. But then eventually...
And I never claimed to have played before, I never claimed that at all. I got in on beta day one and just said, hey, I'm going to start learning how to play StarCraft. Here's some streams, and let's get a little bit of exposure to these smaller players and things like that. And, yeah, the community chews up a lot of people that don't necessarily deserve to be chewed up. You got to agree with that, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've been on the receiving end for...
And I would say that a lot of... Or at least a fair bit of the reason why it exploded bigger StarCraft 2 than just with the old Brood War guys was the type of personality like Totalbiscuit who
to look at pretty much as the driving force behind the start of casual viewership of StarCraft 2 esports, right? And then there's other people like HD, obviously Day9's involved in that as well in a big way. And then there's people that were less important, like myself, that really helped drive that organically from the very start. And that's why even in the beta, we had huge views for tournaments. This was nothing to do with Blizzard at all. And Wheat helped out a lot as well. He has that cross-game appeal, and he has that
established
established
There's nothing wrong with
fan
being
base.
cross-game, guys.
No, I don't think so either. Were you saying that there is, though, John?
No,
not John, for sure.
I know Richard doesn't think there is either, you know?
Yeah,
he's
exactly,
already said
because-
it's a smart business decision. But
Yeah,
what I
absolutely.
disagree
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's not even just about business decisions, because that's an individual thing. But actually, one of the things that holds esports back, and this has always been something I've said, and it's well documented, I've said this a million times, is the tribalism. Is that people attach themselves to one game. Not, that's why I've always said I'm an esports journalist. I've written about maybe a dozen titles. So I'm definitely not chewing you up about changing games. But what I'm saying is that, the idea that, if Totalbiscuit says he's changing game, then there's got to be something wrong, because he's been so loyal and his allegiance is so strong with StarCraft 2. When what I'm saying is I don't think that's ever been true. I think you were there at the right time, and now that time's changed, and you'll go where it's right again because you're intelligent like that. In many ways, it's a backhanded compliment, what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't think it's true, though, because at the end of the day, if you're getting in at the right time, then you're doing it to be as opportunistic as possible. You're not, say, sinking a bunch of money into a South Korean esports team every month, thinking, this is Axiom Esports is not going to raise my profile. It's the other way around. Axiom gains a profile as a result of me being involved in it. Shoutcraft doesn't raise my profile because I'm preaching to the choir, right? They already know who I am because I've gone to cast all of these different events and things like that. I don't think that jumping into StarCraft at the right time, then jumping off, is really a fair representation of what it actually is. I got into StarCraft because I felt like it at the time. If I get out of StarCraft, it's because the scene has got to the stage where I don't feel like it's enjoyable anymore and I don't have the passion for it.
Scoots, you've been quiet for a while, so you have any thoughts on this?
No, I really don't. I mean, this is obviously a personal.
He's already out, man.
There's
He's
some
already
personal
out. That's
stuff between Richard and John that just, they jabbed each other. It led to this.
That's fine. We're British.
Yeah.
We've got to do that.
No,
right?
but I mean, I don't have a deep and hard opinion on it.
To be fair, John does it way more to me than I ever do to him.
Well,
to be
I
fair,
mean,
Richard,
John
Right.
so much better at it than you are.
Oh shit!
I basically think that TV just tweeted, "Hey, I'm a caster, and it looks like I got nowhere to fucking work locally. I don't know." Like, and that's a
Pretty much.
frustrating thing, Yeah. And yet,
Turns out that might not be the case, by the way, but...
Yeah, and again, that's all part of this vagueness from the Sundance tweet, right? Like, it starts this doom and gloom train, and again, no offense to you for... I was tweeting shit. I fucking tweeted the fucking beep of the fucking EKG. So, again, is it one event? Is StarCraft dying because there's no StarCraft at MLG? What does this mean? Like, no one knows. And again, like, I tweet shit all the time. So if I got called out like John did every time he tweets this kind of shit, fuck, I'd be on shows nonstop. So,
You used to be on one every show.
Yeah, and again, like in TB's defense, he's heavily invested in the scene. Whether he puts his voice on a North American event next year or not is a totally different story, because there might not be much for him, or there might be. We don't know, It would be a far bigger deal if John's tweet today was, got nowhere to cast, moving on, or I'm closing Axiom, moving on. Two different beasts here, right? And how they affect the scene.
Agreed.
And I think the point to really be made about MLG is that MLG for the longest time has been this linchpin of the American live scene. And there's been other people come along. NASL obviously came along, did it a bit, and then IPL came along and then obviously doesn't do it a bit anymore. But ever since the start, MLG has been the thing for US esports, and that's where the spectators have gone, whether it be on the stream or whether it be at the live events. MLG has been our dream hack. I say our. I've lived here for a fucking year. What am I doing? It's been America's dream hack. I'm fully
Cue the Eagles.
now. Yeah,
DreamHack, when we started doing our live production, we looked at MLG and so okay, they're doing it this way, but what if we take that piece from MLG, but we change it and do this? So they were an inspiration in the early days, actually.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about MLG and DreamHack crowds, but the
Hello?
Squid, apparently the French are amazing, but MLG and DreamHack crowds are incredible. So it's a real kick in the teeth to see that going. I regularly cast MLGs.
Yep.
They are the most fun for me. I get the most access to the fans. I could just wander around the audience and talk to people for hours. It's fucking awesome. And that environment there just isn't replicated anywhere else in the US right now. And to say that this is not a bad thing would be totally disingenuous. And to me, it's just a big kick in the teeth.
So Robert, DreamHack, do you see this as... do you even see this as an opportunity for
I was just
even coming to US?
I was just teasing when I was tweeting about nature abhors a vacuum. Thing is,
I know that.
Such a fucking
I
troll.
think it would be really, really, really bad if
DreamHack Vancouver.
if which I don't think if another major player or entity in the US went titty up. That would be bad for the whole esport industry globally, I think.
Yeah, I can't see any other way around that, really. It's not just necessarily about providing that experience to the spectators, which now we obviously don't have. It's about saying, oh, this is how vibrant the US StarCraft 2 scene is. Not at all. Right, great. So where's the money going to go then? Who's even going to get in? Was it one of you, it was either one of you or In Control that made this point earlier today, that the whole WCS situation kind of just seems to scare away those who want to independently invest in the scene. And as a result, the scene either remains stagnant or shrinks. It doesn't grow.
Right.
Yeah. True.
Totally agree.
It feels like regulation arrived. You know, I come from an era like where we had regulation in our telephone system and all that kind of shit, and then it got deregulated, and anybody could give you phone service. I remember when it was Bell. Like, you had Bell, right? It feels like WCS
Bell.
has regulated in the onus of a bigger, better thing, but like you just said, just stamped the shit out of everybody else and their mother who was trying.
Yeah,
Or
let's
Why would
the
I
hoops you have to jump through make you go,
Right.
well, okay, maybe not for me. Anyway.
Right. Why would I, as an organizer, spend time, even in a grassroots, position? Why would I spend time trying to get, involved with Blizzard if I'm going to have to jump through all the hoops? I mean, for me, I just think that this whole thing of developers running their own events and having so much control on all of that has just stifled growth. It doesn't mean that good things can't happen. I just think that for the smaller side of things, it just people are just like, well, I'm not going to do it,
Is it
In the
is it
NA
a
scene,
Is
yeah.
it a structure
From-
thing? I mean,
I think it's a structure thing.
Okay, so this is going to be a later topic. Actually, we were going to all discuss, but I'll bring it
I
up right
still
now.
think it has a difference between European mindset and American mindset.
Yes.
Even
yes.
though
right about
the
that.
US,
There's
even though
a big
the US,
difference in mindset.
even though the US is like the capitalist Eden of everything, they love their fucking monopolies. Whereas in Europe, just because it's so many different nations, we thrive on competition and we welcome competition. But because the more competition we have, the better we get to hone our skills, and so everybody wins in the end. Because everybody has to be on their,
When I was saying
toes.
structure, I meant first. Let's just talk about StarCraft. Since we're talking about StarCraft, and StarCraft has kind of experienced both structures now that I was referring to. Which one is more of what we were doing about 2 years ago, where Dota 2 is right now with Valve, versus this more of a league structure, which is WCS, or you can just look at LoL 2 with the LCS. Do you think the issue right now is that StarCraft 2 maybe shouldn't be in this kind of WCS
In the league
structure?
format?
Yeah, in a league format.
There's potentially. It doesn't seem to have resonated all that well in the US at any rate. When Robert talks about the difference in scenes, if we were to say that any scene's in trouble, it's clearly North America, and you need to only look at the numbers to see that that's true. The European scene's actually doing pretty fucking well, and DreamHack numbers are great, and WCS Europe numbers are really good as well. And they've been the strongest out of every scene for the longest time, and they'll probably remain that way. But I think overall, the worldwide league structure hasn't necessarily worked the way that Blizzard hoped it would. They were hoping to make 3 GSLs, saying, hey, the GSL did well, let's do the GSL in 2 other countries. But they didn't get all of I don't really think they understood what made the GSL so successful to begin with. It wasn't the format.
No, it was geography, because South Korea is small. Everybody lives in Seoul. It's much easier from a
Everyone's on
logistics
camera all the
standpoint.
damn time. And there's the talent there. There's that mystery involved in it as well. It's like this amazing Korean talent is all there, always in the booth with the GSL level production. And then you start off WCS with a round of 32 online where a bunch of people get knocked out 0-4. And then you think, oh, well, keeping the hype going here is pretty difficult.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Let's be frank. Like WCS, it has been pretty good in WCS Europe, but I don't think it's any better than the Europe scene was before WCS. And I think WCS has been outright bad for NA, and I don't think it's been good for Korea either. So I mean, it's
Robert, Richard, and John. For me, having ran events for so long, the one thing that the difference between the North American players and the European players in every event that we ran was, you guys were talking about, there's just a different mindset. And for me, when I think about that, the mindset for me was the difference I could see was that the Europeans just wanted to play. They just wanted to compete, and they weren't so concerned with all of the politics and all of the meddling with things. They just showed up to play. While the North America players that we had to deal with, in IDRA was one of them in one of the events that we ran, is that they were just there was just something different about it. When it was always that way from working at GGL all the way up to today. There's always been a difference in just the mindset that the Europeans just want to play. They just want to play the game, and they want to enjoy it. And so their
but they have
community
the
is tighter.
unity, right?
When
Right.
North American North American players come to Europe, and especially DreamHack, because that's where I see them, they really loosen up, and I think they enjoy the environment at a DreamHack, for instance, because it's less rigid. There's nobody telling you what to say or how to say it.
But
I urged Jeff, for instance, to swear more on stream. That was really hard for him the first time.
so all the nuances, all the personality of the events. I mean, no question. Okay, the Europeans definitely do a funner, just a more fun version of what the Americans do. Okay, I mean there's no questioning that. What I'm talking about is just more the structure. I mean, DreamHack is a tournament. It's a weekend tournament. Versus, what ESL has to do, right, over in Europe, which is every single, 4 days a week. You don't have this kind of big event except for maybe once every 3 months.
Well,
right?
Chris, you know my thoughts. I think a league would work, and I think it certainly does. I think the WCS is a poorly put together, poorly structured event. But I think a league in the United States in North America would certainly work. But again, if it's only catering to the top and it's all about the production value and the media, especially in North America, maybe not so much in Europe, then I just think it stifles growth from the bottom up, and people are like, the smaller organizations are like, I ain't gonna run anything, and the players that were on the bubble before, as to deciding whether or not to really make a career at playing professional StarCraft, have just said, I'm not close enough. That there's not a good chance of me getting into that league, and pretty much there's nothing else going on. So I think it is a matter of structure. I mean, maybe if they did something different and catered to the bottom a little bit more, it would change it. But I don't know.
Scoots,
something ain't right.
Let me hear from Scoots real quick. Hold on. Scoots, what do you think about that?
Again, I think we all do it, right? And we do it in real life. You look at something that works as a business or a restaurant or whatever, and you go, I can recreate that. I can redo that. We see that a lot here from team models recreating other team models that may be successful or not, right? To certainly leagues looking at what others are doing production value-wise or even structure-wise, right? And I think we spend too much time looking at Riot when you're trying to talk about StarCraft. Right? Or team game versus 1v1. I've always thought that
so silly.
That StarCraft and even fighting games, anything that's kind of a 1v1 shit, even Quake, right? Although you could GTM, you could CTF, but it's much more like action sports, like skateboarders or like tennis players or like golfers, and there's different structures that support those high level scenes, whether it's the PGA for the top golfers of the world or it's the ATP for tennis. They're not team leagues. They're not structured that way. In some regards, they're far
essentially.
Yeah, exactly, John, and therefore far more independent in their substructure of running. The Masters, for example, runs incredibly different as a weekend tournament for the PGA than the U.S. Open, than the Hartford Open, than the Phoenix Open. They all kind of same rule set as golfers, but they get that little individuality, right? So you get a flavor of the Phoenix Open is a crazy fucking party, whereas the Masters is the exact opposite of a crazy fucking party. But they're both the exact same golfers, both playing by the exact same rule set. But the vibe of the event is dramatically different. We used to have that. MLG was MLG, ESL and IEM were IEMs, DreamHack was it thing, and NASL was it thing. And now they all got to smell and feel like WCS at the top, and they shouldn't. They absolutely shouldn't. And what Riot does is great. What's happening in Seattle this weekend? Fucking amazing. I think you look at production value shit more than anything else at these events and go, how do we do that? Not how is a league structured? How are they taking care of players? How do they pay them? Because it's so different. It's so different.
Hey, if DreamHack had the International Threes budget, we'd do stuff that would be a lot cooler. I just think it's a good production, but it's not that fucking good.
No, it's not. You know what it is, John? Or John, you know what it is, Robert? It's crisp and clean, and they're on the fucking spot. It's not overdone. It's not overproduced. It's just everything ties in, perfectly, and that as it should. And then it all goes away. Then you're just watching amazing Dota. It goes away, right? Just like when you're watching the Super Bowl, you're not. Oh my God! Look at how crispy this HD is. You're watching or World Cup or whatever. It goes
very
away.
Much wish you'd say that.
Yeah.
Oh my God! The lights just went out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Is that her breast? I think it is.
I think one thing which has not bothered me, but made me think for a long time is why does a 1v1 game have teams?
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I mean,
another
it comes
show.
down to
If you
well,
compare
Another
it
damn
like
show.
tennis,
it's down to monetary
tennis-
support at the end
Yeah,
of the
it's,
day.
it's
Yeah.
absolutely monetary support for sure.
Their
Yeah,
agents,
Basically,
they're
more viable that way.
The
agencies,
teams
and-
are more of a management,
yes,
or
yeah.
kinda.
well,
but it's-
outside of Korea,
Look at it like a racing team or a bike team. They all race their own bike, but they do
Yeah.
have that back end support.
yeah, I mean, in
But if you
Korea,
wanna
when you
compare it
talk
to,
about
like,
teams,
golf
you
or-
talk about guys that practice with each other and live in the same house on a regular basis. They become stronger as a direct result. Outside of it, as Scoots has said, it really is a monetary issue because you get more exposure from having more players in different tournaments with their own separate brands that contribute to the whole. It's easier to get sponsors that way. But, I mean, I totally see your point in terms of playing the game. It actually makes no sense. It's entirely business-driven.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about practice facilities too, TV, like we could actually create practice facilities for players separately.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
now we're
in
going
an
down.
ideal world.
Yes, but let's
it's
be
just-
honest, it hasn't had a good success record
I know,
so
but
far.
I'm just
has it?
saying, like, if that's really the only reason we're quote unquote have teams, that's not even really
No.
conducive for the
Well, I
model
mean, teams
either.
outside of
Yeah.
Korea don't really do that anyway. You know, we've talked about that many times in the past.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
just to throw a spanner in the works, because we're deviating naturally anyway, and I definitely want to get John's thoughts on this, because if I hadn't baited him onto the show, I would never have been able to get his opinion. But
I asked him earlier, dude.
me and Chanman planned this shit. That's why I was turning up late. I was just thinking of how to do it, John. So anyway, region locking, yeah. I mean, obviously, you're passionate about the North American StarCraft scene, and you know, you did the whole Shoutcraft thing. So, I mean, do you think region locking would have helped North American StarCraft, you know, if it wasn't dominated by Koreans?
I don't even have doubts about that. I thought about that ever since the start of it, that it should have been region locked because the scenes in general need their own kind of individual support. We can look at the way Europe's running right now and say, well, Europe's doing fine without region locking. Yeah, that's because like 3 Koreans showed up, you know, not 20. And it's a little bit of a different matter entirely, isn't it? And the Europe scene is thriving on the basis of its European players, not on the basis of its Koreans, right? That, contrary to some people's belief, all of the Koreans showing up to a tournament doesn't make people necessarily watch that tournament. And to some degree, too many of them showing up actually reduces the viewers because people like to root for the underdog and the foreign hope. But if that foreign hope doesn't make it to the round of 16, then there's not really going to, you know, it's not going to go all that well for them. But,
Which is, I mean, how I feel about, like, I know, again, we shouldn't obviously draw too many comparisons. Scoots is absolutely right when comparing LoL and StarCraft. But one of the things I say Riot have done brilliantly in LCS has been sort of create that narrative, even to the point of the All-Star game, the All-Star, you know, national tournament, you know, who gets an extra place in the World Finals, and it's very distinct. You know, you've got the North American champions, you know, you've got the Korean champions, you know, you've got the European champions, and they all come together at the end for a World Final. And you know, people do get behind the representatives of their continent, whether they're conscious of it or not. And you know, I feel that's been to the massive detriment. I mean, we said it when WCS was announced. We were like, really? And we understood why it was happening, but the lack of region locking has really made, I think, a lot of people tune out of WCS. You know, there's no hometown to root for.
yeah, well, and even if that weren't the case, it's still a case of players actually being able to make a brand and a name for themselves. Yet again, we see another NA team going down in the form of FXO NA. Barely a peep about it, because at the end of the day, those players never got exposure. And you're saying, well, why don't they just play better? Yeah, that's a bit of a catch-22 situation, isn't it? If you don't have that local competition, and if you don't have that ability to actually grow yourself as a player, and more to the point, be able to support yourself, something Robert mentioned, yeah, the Europeans just want to play. Well, in reality, playing in America just to play and also support yourself and be able to pay rent is pretty difficult. And as we see, there's a lot of part-timers in North America as a direct result of that, and they just don't get the kind of performance that you would have expected from someone that can focus 100% of the time. And then you have the weaker ladder, which has, as a result of that, it's all linked together.
Yeah. And I've got to say as well, it's a similar situation to what's happening in the UK sports-wise as well, and not just
yes,
not just in
But
StarCraft,
the
but you know,
US
as a whole.
it's been happening for
US
years
has
in the UK. Yeah,
EG. You have EG, guys. That's the most professional team on the planet.
yeah, it's a great Korean team.
Or Swedish.
Game. Yeah,
Swedish
they have
team,
multiple,
actually. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's the Lions.
Sorry.
It's a secret.
Oopsie.
It's an entirely separate thing, guys.
Yeah.
They have some sort of alliance, I think.
Oh, God.
Never.
I just
never
complained
check
they didn't
the
call them
IP.
Horde.
Well, you know what's funny about the whole WCS thing and the region locking is it was so successful in the first year, you know, and
It was successful because of WCS EU, because everybody remembers that.
Yes.
Remember
they do.
that it was kind of it wasn't streamlined. You know, it was especially in Europe, it was so many differences in quality of tournaments, and South America was I've heard pretty horrendous. You know how they
Was
did
it?
it,
Wow,
and so
I didn't know.
yeah.
Okay, I mean, because I knew about the Mexico one, but okay.
Well, yeah, and the MLG North America stuff was jammed into the other event. Like, it was not.
Well, it
again,
wasn't. I mean, I'm not saying that it was executed probably, but I feel like the structure of it ended up being, I think, successful, given that we had national champions for a while, right? And then we
Yeah,
had a
see,
regional champion.
I have a
and-
hard time, like, saying the global winner of this magical tournament if really you weren't properly globally fielded and seeded to get there. Yes, if it was just North American region and it was locked down by passport, that guy is going to have a hard time. But at least we know who properly represents who lives where, right? Just like the Olympics. Like, shit, remember back in the WCG days, we would lose our strat caller in Counter-Strike because he's Finnish. Fucked us every time. But, like, you knew which country provided the best team that year through a qualification system. This is go where, can afford to go where, decide to enter where, right? And that gets you a different champion, right? It gets you a completely different champion. And again, I'd rather have it truly be locked.
Different feel. It's a whole different feel to it. It doesn't even give you the same feel. I mean, they want to make it seem like it's a global champion and it's based on regions, but without region lock, it literally is a completely different feel. It's like
Exactly.
why even do it? Why even mention
GSLs
regions?
and the EU? You know,
Right.
That's what it is right now.
Yeah, that anybody can enter, kind of, sort of, maybe.
Right.
Depend, you know.
If you've got the money, actually, you know, I mean, there's a reason why there's three, you know, the three dominant teams in WCS NA are all foreign-owned teams with lots of Koreans on them, because they can afford to actually fly their players there in the first place.
Yep.
I mean,
right.
Because you don't get any travel support.
I really don't understand how Blizzard have kind of mangled this so badly, though, because we've had Dennis on the show to take, and he was talking about, like, trying to get, you know, WCS points for his home story cup, and the hoops he had to jump through for that, and how excruciating it was. I mean, like, it was really tough. I mean, even for a recognised and well-respected event like his. And I don't know, it just seems like Blizzard don't even understand what they've got. You know, like, WCS for me has just been like, it's been the biggest esports disappointment like I can think of. You know, I mean, since the collapse of CGS, which in many ways was a blessing anyway, the whole sort of WCS fiasco has just been horrible. You know, it's horrible to witness.
Perfect word, fiasco. I'll probably never get a job with Blizzard due to my tweeting in the last 6 months, but yeah, it's a cluster.
They know that, guys. I mean, like,
you keep saying that, Chris.
They
but
know
I
that.
don't think
That's
they
all
know
I will
that.
say is
They
they know that.
The people
You
in
have
this
conversations with them all the time, I know, and you talk with them, and you explained it to them, but nothing gets done. I told them their point system was pure shit from the very beginning. No word, nothing. Nothing gets done, though. I mean, you can talk to them, and they can agree.
They know it's not good right now. They know
The problem is they back themselves into a position where they can't do anything about it. At least not until the end of Season 3, by which point one has...
They have to wait until 2014 to pretty much do any drastic things at this point, because it's already been laid out, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
But even then, it's going to screw people over. What happens if they do decide to region lock it in 2014? Then all the guys that basically earned their spots in the Premier Division of either EU or NA have to go back to Korea and fight through Challenger again? Is that how it's going to be?
If it has to start over, it has to start over. I mean, what's the other choice? Just to continue doing this shit?
Well, there isn't one. That's the problem.
I know. It's like, better to start over.
We did not choose to be in this position.
Yeah. Or better just to scrap it and just go back to what it was.
Mm-hmm.
You already have to license the DreamHacks, the
Yeah.
MLGs, the ESLs. You already have a licensing process for these top people. Add to that some sort of point structure and reel it back 3 years to when all these guys could be independent, could work together to make sure they didn't step on weekends. Figure out a point structure for Tier 1 and Tier 2, similar to what you're doing now. When you give out your licenses, feed big points to BlizzCon. Feed big points to BlizzCon and still have a big party at the end of BlizzCon and award your champion. But like unleash some of these restrictions that everyone has to play under, right? From monetization to timing and all that shit. And maybe Sundance goes, all right, it's worth our while again because we don't have to jump through these 12 million hoops for these guys, you know? It's just, again, I think they've done more harm than overall good with this implementation of WCS. Simple as that. And like John said, now they're down this road. How do you fix what's inherently broken that's at the core of your model for what this is, right? Without starting over. And then upsetting those, and pissing on what the players have already achieved, right? I don't know.
What if they gave them forewarning though? Like, I mean, you there's nothing to say that they can't halfway through. I mean, in a couple months, they announced there will be major changes for 2014.
Yeah.
I would at least indicate that there's been a lot of planning put into it, which is more than I can say for the first year of WCS. So that would help a lot.
I mean, I got to say as well, though, it's like, right, they set out to have some goals, and like all the things they said they wanted to achieve with WCS, things like they wanted to have a simpler narrative was one of the objectives. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like we can all agree here, like anyone with half a brain can see, like I can't tell you what's going on half the time. I find finding, unless it's the work that ESL have done, I find, following it really difficult. That's as a journalist that it's his job to follow it. Yeah. God only knows what a casual feels about it, and it's all over the place. It really is. So they've not achieved that goal. Then there was this idea about creating one recognized champion at the end. Well, holy shit, that's not going to happen, right? I mean, and is anyone still sort of with who it might be, who the front runner? Honest to God, it is just a nightmarish mishmash of incomplete ideas, and it's such a shame because I think, again, sorry to do it, I think we've seen with something like LCS how a solid TV broadcast and a league format with regular weekend matches and stuff can work.
But we can't do that. We can't do what LCS.
I'm not saying we can't.
We just can't do that in StarCraft.
There are elements that they.
So why did we try with less money and less competence? That's the problem. It's if you're going to try and ape that model, you better damn well be ready to do it. Alternatively, don't ape the model and do what has been healthy for the scene for the past few years, which is the tour model. There are tournaments run by different people with different feels in different places around the globe.
Honestly,
the only thing that was missing is relevant.
The only thing that was missing, guys, from what we were doing before, and it was kind of starting to head that way, was like you said, or whoever it was said scheduling. Everybody just needed to coordinate and schedule. And honestly, we just needed the concept of majors, like like the Masters and the British Open, the US Open. We just needed like MLG Anaheim, DreamHack, DreamHack Summer, Winter, whichever DreamHack, ESL Katowice, whatever we choose as being the major tournaments, and just have that be kind of the storyline instead of crowning this global champion, which
you can still, and I've positioned this before. You can still put a point system together, but give them their individuality. Let the tournaments happen the way they happened before. Just very similar to what we were talking about earlier with golf and the Masters and the Phoenix. They still earn points by playing in those tournaments because they're still following the basic rules, but different feel. And let them just finish it out throughout the season. Take the top 16 guys that earn points throughout all of those majors, and boom, you have a finals. But you at least gave individuality to each event, and there was a champion at each event.
I mean, look, but the thing about that, John, is that just look at golf, right? Golf does that with the FedEx Cup. Nobody gives a shit who wins the FedEx Cup at the end. They just win a $4 million prize at the end. It's like, or more than that. But nobody gives a shit about that. Everybody gives a shit who won the majors.
Yeah, but that's different
that's all
because
that matters. I mean,
you're playing against the elements more than you are against the player, and I think
there's a luck factor in StarCraft. You're playing against different matchups, or your bracket's a different matchup. That it's going to be heavy on one matchup or the other, right? And that's kind of, it's a little bit luck based too in StarCraft to some extent.
Well, lots of sports and lots of cool things do have that luck element to it, and they're still compelling.
Absolutely. Okay, I guess to sum things up, this kind of was unexpected and went on. So we should all, as a community, just like pipe down a little bit.
Community. Stop using the fucking word community. How about that? As a community, how about we stop calling what we fucking all are communities, because they're not.
No, they're not.
Explain
What are
it.
they?
No,
What are
no.
they?
You know who is
explain it.
community?
Yes.
The 50
Hold on.
hardcore
Explain it.
Quake guys that have lived on ES Reality for the last decade, talking about their game day in, day out. That's a fucking community.
There are two of them right here.
800 people that care about Counter-Strike and have for 10 years. That's a community. Everything big like this, like our huge fan bases, we're not a community. We're just not.
Not an overarching community. You've got to be bound together by something more than I like video game.
Right.
There needs to be something more than that to it.
Well, yeah, I like a particular video game. So you're a fan base of StarCraft 2, but I don't know, John, the word community just gets thrown around in such a warm, fuzzy, like, we can change the world, let's light a peace pipe, community, and we're not. We're just not. We don't act like it. We certainly don't behave like one. And I say we very, very generally, whether you're a Dota fan or a League fan or StarCraft, I think they're too big to be communities these days, right?
Only time I ever see a community mobilize is either if they're trying to get someone fired or they're going onto a subreddit to flame someone else's game.
No, huge fan bases, don't get me wrong. I just like the community word just always rings weird to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's interesting. I didn't really think about it like that, but that's cool. All right, guys. Well, we're going to go on and talk about Quake. I don't know who wants to stick around for that or not. You guys are welcome to take off if you want, or appreciate you guys coming on.
Or you can
Yeah,
stay.
I've got to bail.
Or
I got to
you
get
can
back
stay.
to recording bullshit, so that's what I'm
Recording
got.
bullshit.
I
No
want
worries.
to watch
Dota 2.
Alliance.
Cheers for coming on the show, and like I say, I'm sure
I
you'll
appreciate
do very well in Dota 2, brother. I'm sure it'll be good for you.
I'm
See you
announcing
at
my $20,000
DreamHack.
Awesome Noughts tournament next week. That's how it's going to be. All right, guys. Thanks a
See
lot.
you guys.
All right,
See
thank
you
you.
guys.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for having me on. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks.
Cheer up.
Be back, Vancouver.
Thank
Make
you.
it happen.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Quake a DreamHack. Quake a DreamHack.
And an esports
That's right,
panel.
Quake.
Climbing the ladder.
That's right.
I tried, Chan. I tried.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, man. But
There you go.
all
See,
right.
you were worried there, Chris. You were worried, but the thing is about Brits, man, we're all bluff and bluster. But you put us in a room, we go all civilized.
That's true.
You
That's
have
true.
British people. I mean, the British people and also pussies, right? Yeah.
So true. Okay, let's take a break real quick so I can fix these overlays. But
How long do we have? How long are you going to give us a break?
Let's say 5 minutes. Sound
Okay,
good?
that's perfect. I'm going to go smoke one.
All right,
All right,
we'll be
bye-bye.
right back.